So Manchester United draw 2-2 away at Forest, and honestly, felt a little bit like a defeat. But when you take a step back, you capture your breath, and you look at it properly, probably got to be grateful that we got the point in the end, because I just felt there were far too many players who underperformed to deserve a win. And when that happens, it's always going to be difficult to win away games in the Premier League, where you have the amount of players that we did on the pitch that just weren't quite at their level. There wasn't the same intensity. I don't think there was the same sharpness that we've seen in recent weeks. And I said in the preview that part of the reason we've been winning games recently is cutting out individual errors. And then what did we do here? Straight back to basics. I felt there were mistakes, all over the pitch. Not just errors that cost us like goals or anything, but momentum. There were passages of play that fell down because of loose touches or bad passes. I felt we lost control that way as well. It lost, and ultimately cost us 2 points. But let's be fair, Forest played their part. They were probably as expected, well organised, battling, balls into the box, made it very, very difficult for us, and we're winning their duels, and that was an area that I felt we really lacked in. We weren't winning anywhere near as many duels, and we're pretty much second best in that department for the entire game, I felt, which was something that was just a bit of a concern. But overall, I just felt it was one of those games, that got away from us, where we just weren't at the races, and as I mentioned, far too many players that were just below their levels and just felt a little bit off, which is a concern. But when you take a step back, if you get a point out the end of that, it is what it is, isn't it? In the first half, I didn't think we were particularly great, but we're in control. Casemiro got the opener, good finish, and at that point, I thought we'd go on. The game would go exactly how we'd planned: professional, patient, get the job done. Forest were scrappy, which we knew would happen. I said in the preview that Sean Dyche in charge, they'd sit deep, battle for everything, make it like an ugly game. That's exactly what they did. But even with that, at halftime, I thought, all right, we might not be at our best. But we're 1-0 away from home. That's fine. Surely we'll step it up the second half. Forest will come out and hopefully give us the space in behind, and then we can go on, get the second, maybe a third, and see out that game. See out the game, and so I was hoping at halftime, surely we'll come out second half and be a little bit better than what we were the first half. But of course, the opposite happened, didn't it? And that's where it all, unraveled. We came out second half asleep, or if not fully asleep, within 2 minutes. We're 2-1 down. 2 quick goals that completely flipped the game, and this is where those individual mistakes killed us. Sloppy passing, bad decision making, losing duels, exactly what you can't afford to do against a Sean Dyche side, or any side away in the Premier League, in my opinion, because they will live off those moments. The crowd will get up for it, and then we've got players that are weak mentality or will fold within themselves. So you give them that sniff, they will be all over you, and that's how I felt it went a little bit in the second half. Our passing, wasn't quite there, went to bits, confidence dropped for a little bit, and we never really got back in full control. And really, I felt we were just second best for almost everything in that second half specifically. Couldn't win duels. We're sort of getting forced into areas. Our passing wasn't quite crisp, giving the ball away quite cheaply as well, and we just weren't quite at it, specifically in that second half. And that 2-minute spell, cost us everything, didn't it? Really. But to be fair, we didn't completely fold, and that's where there is still some progress, because last season, that's a game we'd have lost 3-1, maybe even worse. But we fought back. What a strike from Amad Diallo, by the way, to make it 2-2. And I'll be honest, halfway, literally at that time, just before the corner, I was writing some notes for like putting down some thoughts and stuff for this. Already annoyed, expecting us to have lost that game. And then Amad smashes one from the edge of the box that made my dog nearly have a heart attack when I screamed. What an absolute screamer. And we nearly won it in the end as well. Obviously, Bruno hit the post. Casemiro couldn't follow up the rebound. And then Amad, one cleared off the line or just before the line as well, right at the end. So credit to the team for coming back and, not completely downing tools and losing that game. But it wasn't great overall, was it? Wasn't particularly great, and especially for Ahmad. I mean, it was a beautiful goal, but he wasn't particularly great neither as well. But he turned a nightmare day into something, something. At least we didn't lose that game because I felt that this is a team that could have easily gone on to lose that game. But let's go through the players quickly because I felt we had some mixed performances. I thought Sen Lemons was steady as ever, didn't have much chance with the goal, so not at blame. But I felt was overall solid. Luke Shaw, good first half, shaky second through that period as well. Delit, for me, my man of the match, strong in the duels, covered for others, and was reliable as ever. Lenny Yoro had a tough day, especially with the physicality against the Dice type team, but didn't do anything particularly wrong. Obviously, Mazraoui came on for Yoro. I felt he looked a little bit nervous when he came on, to be fair. Diego Dallo, I genuinely don't know what he offers this team apart from pulling faces, goal celebrations, and ball watching. Someone please explain to me in the comments, what Diego Dallo's offering this team right now, because I think we've been carrying him for the last few performances as well. And against Brighton, he did okay, but didn't really influence the game in any way, shape, or form. And I do think he's a problem at the moment. Anyway, Diego Dallo, obviously rightly replaced for Dorgu in the second half, a little bit too late in my opinion. Dorgu did improve us a little bit when he came on, in his credit. I felt Casemiro obviously got the good opening goal. I felt he had a decent game, but legs went late on, and when you've got no legs, it becomes a bit of a problem. Got a little bit lazy with his pass, and I felt when he tired towards the end, and we'll talk about the lack of substitutes in a second. Bruno, really quiet, probably one of his worst games for a while, I felt, from Bruno, but again, hits the post, nearly wins it for us, which is what Bruno is capable of. But overall, I felt his performance he didn't have a particularly good game. Ahmad, poor defensively, was targeted at that back post. I don't think there's much he can do apart from being taller, and you can't really do that. That's the the risk that you have, the risk and reward factor, isn't it, with Ahmad? I mean, the risk is that what we saw at the back post, where he's not tall enough to compete and win a header, but then the reward is what he does up the other end as well. So it's one of those with Ahmed. But I thought overall he didn't have his best game, but produced the moment that saved us, could have won it for us in the end. And then Mateus Cunha, not his usual self, I didn't think. I think he looked a little bit off the pace as well, but grew into the game. Probably fair to keep him on at the end with what we saw against Liverpool. Felt last 20 minutes he came alive a little bit more, but again, was just felt a little bit off it. And Bumo, I thought was one of his weakest games, actually. I think he's our best attacking player. Almost got doubled up on by Forest. I'd have to watch it back, but it kind of felt that every time he got the ball, he was being marked out of the game from Sean Dyche, which was clearly a tactic and clearly a worry as well. Because if teams start doing that and it works, and then the space should be then down the left hand side, but then if you're consistently playing Diego Dallo down there, that's a problem because Dallo's he can't cross the road, I don't think, let alone put a ball in the box. So that's an issue, something I'd be interested in if I watch the game back to see whether that's right. But I thought he had a poor game by his standards, and that doesn't mean that he was poor. It's just I expect more from him, Bumo, which is mad. And then Sesko, I felt struggled to get into the game. Had a couple of nice touches, but a couple of poor touches as well. Probably showed his age and his lack of experience for that game. But I actually felt the best player on the pitch, or the best, one of the best players on the pitch anyway. Anderson from Forest, outstanding. Totally bossed the midfield, I felt. And if you watched Brighton's game last week, where Baleba had a poor game, Anderson the complete opposite here. So if we're going to call it like an audition, for the midfield roles, then Anderson definitely outshone Baleba in the last 2 weeks. Anyway, that's for sure. I thought he was one of the best players on the pitch, actually. Elliot Anderson, really liked what I saw from him there. So that's one to pay attention to, because obviously he's a name that we're linked with for the midfield, and I think he would massively improve us in that area. So yeah, I just felt too many players had a bad day at the office, and that's what do you expect then when you're away from home? You're just asking for trouble, aren't you? Sean Dyche, again, it was balls into the box. I said in the preview, that's our kryptonite, set pieces, balls into the box. And lo and behold, that's how we conceded the 2 goals. And defensively, we're one of the worst teams in the league for goals conceded, which we need to sort out because you can't keep giving away goals like that and expect to stay in the top 6. I felt maybe Maguire, missing him could have been a factor for that game. Questions need to be asked about, if Diallo remains in the team for next weekend after that shocker. So there's a few things to work on for sure there. But, when you play badly away from home, still get a point, you've got to take it. On reflection, it was probably a fair result. I think we were the better team overall, but that soft belly where we can implode is still there. And it's not the first time this season where, it is the first time this season where we come back from behind to get anything out of a game, which is slight progress because this is a game we would have lost in the past. I'm convinced by that. The next step is stopping making those mistakes in the first place, which comes down to me. It's mentality, it's player mentality. But overall, we're still unbeaten in the last 4 games, still in the race for Europe. Yes, it's frustrating. We didn't climb the table, could be sat in second at the time of recording this video. Obviously, Bournemouth play City later on today, which could change things, but we could be second in the league. So it is frustrating that we didn't take the opportunity yesterday to do that. But it is progress, and we're showing some fight as well, which is good. We know we're not the finished article, far from it. It's going to, and this is going to happen again, I think, because we haven't got over that hurdle, or we for some reason we cannot break that mentality switch because we've got players who can switch it on and off like a tap, and one of those was the off days where the players had just switched it off. I felt we looked flat, lacked a bit of bite. And obviously that 2-minute spell just after halftime killed us, really, didn't it? But at least we're reacting better now when things go wrong. That's a big difference from last season. And before we wrap up, let's talk about Amorim's subs because that's raised a few eyebrows. Amorim only used 2 subs, Mazraoui for Yoro, Diallo for Dorgu, which was strange because Casemiro looked tired. Bruno, I felt, was having a poor game, but you could pick and choose who you want. You'll probably have different thoughts in the comments around the players and performances and stuff. But really weird that he only used 2. He did say that, he felt that the subs basically wouldn't affect the game and that he wanted the profile of players that were still on the pitch. Xerxes came on last week, contributed to Brighton seconds. Mainu's not exactly, been outstanding in the games where he's come off the bench and has given the ball away a couple of times as well. So I just think Amorim's like, I don't trust them in this moment to bring on, which itself says something about maybe where the squad is and how Amorim kind of feels about some of the players. I thought maybe Mount would have been a shout to bring on, maybe for Bruno, but I clearly think Amorim's looked at the bench and thought, yeah, not today, lads, not today. I'd rather stick with what I've got, which you can tell me what you think about that in the comments below. So yeah, overall disappointing, frustrating, but not a disaster. Bad performance, fair result, and another lesson for Amorim and the squad. Still unbeaten in the last few games, still in the fight for top 6. But remember, it's a reminder that we've got a long way to go in this rebuild, and we need to refocus, get that intensity back, and stop gifting team goals, especially from crosses or balls into the box as well. But let me know below, who was your man of the match? Do you think a draw was a fair result, or did we bottle it? Drop your thoughts in the comments as well. I'll reply to as many as I can. Don't forget to smash a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. See you in the next one.